Hi everyone. This is a quick video that I want to upload sooner than later because I think the contents are extremely important. On October 26th of 2014, the Toronto Star published allegations against a popular radio host, Ghomeshi, that he beat women for sexual pleasure and that he had been sexually harassing at least one female CBC employee. This Toronto Star-backed investigation was conducted and reported by Jesse Brown and Kevin Donovan, who had been working on the story for at least 4 months. Most people focused on the 3 girlfriends who claimed to have been sexually choked and or punched in the head, and the women who subsequently claimed to have been victims of the same. But it should not be forgotten that the 4th anonymous source, later revealed to be Kathryn Borel, caused a very expensive internal investigation into the CBC, ultimately resulting in 2 men being suspended and losing their jobs. The problem with anonymous allegations, made through the media and not police, is that it's impossible to give a response. Ghomeshi was left guessing who was accusing him, unsure of what evidence he could provide that it was untrue, and the public was even further removed from being able to determine the validity of the claims. The first trial of Ghomeshi saw shocking evidence presented by the defense that the 3 women who had the most substantial claims of date-related sexual assault were so thoroughly discredited that the journalists in the courtroom were gasping out loud. Except for the most devoted of feminist crusaders, the public was in shock and wanted answers as to how we could have been so deceived. The verdict in the trial by judge only will be announced March 24th of this year, and Ghomeshi still has another charge for which the trial is scheduled in June. And I think we can be fairly sure that the Crown will be grilling the next witness much harder about what emails she might have exchanged with Ghomeshi before she gets caught lying on the stand, like all the others. One of the things that always bothered me about the original Toronto Star articles was that when Borel identified herself as a source, no one seemed to care that she and Jesse Brown, one of the writers, had been extremely close friends for over 10 years. It bothered me because that detail was left out of the original story. Jesse Brown and Kathryn Borel are good enough friends that they did a Canada Land podcast. Canada Land is Jesse Brown's organization. He's done very well with this since breaking the Ghomeshi scandal. So they did a Canada Land podcast in December of 2013. This is only 5 or 6 months before he began researching his story on Ghomeshi. They talked about Kathryn's career and her time at the CBC in great detail. Astonishingly, the details of Kathryn's experience on Q and with the CBC in general are drastically different to the accounts they published, both on the Toronto Star and in Borel's Guardian article where she identifies herself and gives more detail. While hanging out with her buddy, Jesse and Kathryn tell us the truth while eating pizza and having a fun chat between friends. So before we hear this, keep in mind that Kathryn claimed in the Toronto Star and in the Guardian in her own article that she was sexually harassed both verbally and physically by Ghomeshi while she was a producer of Q. She was so upset by the environment that was created there that by the time she left, she had gained 25 pounds, was drinking every night, and missing days of work.
I always knew how I could get enough money to live. And it wasn't just pay for my apartment. It was pay for the stupid amounts of wine that I wanted to buy every week and pay for the dumb dinners that I wanted to treat my friends to and that kind of thing. And I always felt like I knew how to monetize my creative predilections in a way that matched what I wanted to spend on myself and my pals and all that kind of stuff. And so
that's like magic. I mean, if you're I can conjure myself and my words and my thoughts into money for my appetites.
I always wanted to have enough money for my appetites, and my appetites have always been great. And that's it.
The rarest thing in the world is
Ultimately, she quit after complaining to the union and having a meeting with an executive producer on the show who asked her how she could make the work environment less toxic. That was a big deal to a lot of people that she was blamed for this and that it was somehow her responsibility to make the environment less toxic. So I'll cut to the heart of the podcast here to save a bit of time. At the 34-minute mark, here is how Jessie and Kathryn describe her behavior and her time at the CBC.
And you were like a bizarre rabid unicorn at the CBC. Like, you were so
nice.
Strange in that environment. You played by your own rules there in a way that would have gotten so many people fired instantly. Where it's like, she's incredibly inappropriate and foul-mouthed and sexual and just like culturally out of step, yet she's sort of like our most productive worker who books the most stuff and gets the most gets and writes the best copy. We like, how could we get rid of her? And she's well liked, but there's like a liability issue of like, what lawsuit is going to originate from this. And like, they were just like in a state of constant.
Did they really want to get rid of you, or like?
I don't think that anyone wanted to get rid of me. I mean, I definitely got like wrapped on the knuckles for my behavior.
Yeah. I think you made people very, very nervous.
I think that I don't
think you ever had an enemy who was trying to get rid of you, and I can't say that about myself.
Right.
Like, but I think you made people very nervous. It was just a complete culture clash of who you were and what that place was.
Yeah, I feel like I was doing a tightrope thing.
You'll note there in that clip that it was Kathryn who was sexualizing the environment to such a degree that Jessie felt she was creating a liability for the CBC, who might one day get sued. She admits she got rapped on the knuckles a few times because her behavior was so bad. Kathryn claims that Ghomeshi once said, "I want to hate fuck you," because she was falling asleep at a meeting. That's in both of the reports, in the Toronto Star and in the Guardian. And you know what? That might be true. But it would pale in comparison to the types of things Borel claims she used to say all the time in meetings.
Possibly. But like, again, you know, I was also like very young. I started working at the CBC when I was like 23 years old. So like, what else? I was just doing what I thought was correct. And I don't know, again, like I feel like I definitely was without guile during those years. Like I wasn't planning to be like this crucial member of the CBC community who was, you know, making a terrible fist fucking joke in the middle of a story meeting and being like, this is my cred. Like, they can't fire me because who else is going to say this shit? I was just kind of like, I don't know.
Making it up as you went along.
I was making it up as I went along.
Yeah.
But like, as most of us are doing, I think, when we're in our early to mid 20s, when we have like the hubris of youth and we, you know.
While it's stated up front that Borel didn't want to talk about Ghomeshi on the show, she later makes it clear what her conflict was, and it wasn't sexual.
And you were working for somebody who basically, like, the conceit was he didn't want the audience to know that you existed.
Sure, yeah, that's definitely true.
Right.
That's true, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I definitely felt like, I'm trying to find, like, the analogous, like, Wizard of Oz reference here, but yeah, definitely, like,
all of them. You're the lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow.
The conflict in the time before I left for LA was that I wanted to be recognized, you know, because I guess I'm an egomaniac, possibly.
No, I think it's fair to like admit that, like,
I just wanted
many of us egomaniacs. I mean,
I just wanted to like be recognized for the portion of like the part that I played in the.
I just wanted. Like, you're bargaining with fate. Like, you actually want quite a bit, and if you got some of these modest things that you're suggesting, my guess is you would still want more.
Additionally, in terms of whether or not the CBC allows sexual harassment to take place without concern, this toxic environment that they didn't much seem to care about and was the core part of her complaint, Borel and Brown described the actual environment, which is quite different. Right off the top, they're laughing about how serious and professional they were expected to be at the CBC, and that creative types like them, artistes, felt stifled.
You know.
Yeah, it was also a shop that was like propriety and everybody like keeping like knowing their place and acting in a certain way was important to everyone but you. And you seem to have this sort of saving grace of like you were kind of tone deaf to office politics, but you were pretty damn good at your job.
I mean, I didn't feel like I was good at my job because I felt like a lot of the feedback that I was getting was that I was tone deaf to office politics. But I always knew that I at least was a hard worker.
So there are a few questions. There's no question that Borel and Brown lied to the public, lied to the Toronto Star, lied to the Guardian. I think the show hosted on Brown's own website, Canadaland. You can go there and listen to the whole episode for more context, in case you think I'm taking it out of context. And it shows that they were, in fact, lying. The question is whether or not Kevin Donovan, who worked with the Toronto Star and was co-writing this, did he know about it? Now, I spoke briefly with Donovan via email, and he said he can't comment on a story that's still in court. I asked him if he had any concerns about Brown's relationships to the sources, and he suggested that I must not know about the upcoming case in June. Well, I do know that the case in June involves another CBC employee, but that wouldn't change that Borel, the Star's original source and sole source in the CBC, lied to them, and that Brown knew it was a lie. The Star's choice to publish allegations from anonymous women, none of whom had filed a police report at the time, raised a lot of eyebrows in terms of the ethics of such allegations being made through the media. In the first trial, media coverage has definitely affected the independence of claims being made and resulted in collusion between complainants. Basically, once you've heard the story in mainstream media, then you know what it is you're supposed to be remembering. Another good question to ask is whether or not reporting what the reporters know to be false accusations is ethical if you think it might draw out a legitimate complaint from somebody else. That would be the case if Borel's lie didn't matter because somebody else at the CBC says that she was harassed and assaulted as well. So that is the question. Is it ethical to do so, knowingly print a false accusation just because maybe somebody out there might have actually had it happen? I'm going to guess no. I don't think that newspapers can lie to the public if they want the public's trust. And Jesse Brown definitely lied.
And you were like a bizarre rabid unicorn at the CBC. Like, you were so strange in that environment. You played by your own rules there in a way that would have gotten so many people fired instantly. It was like, she's incredibly inappropriate and foul-mouthed and sexual and just like culturally out of step, yet she's sort of like our most productive worker who books the most stuff and gets the most gets and writes the best copy. How could we get rid of her? And she's well liked, but there's like a liability issue of like what lawsuit is going to originate from this. And like they were just like in a state of constant
Did they really want to get rid of you, or like?
I don't think that anyone wanted to get rid of me. I mean, I definitely got like rapped on the knuckles for my behavior. I shouldn't say that. Yeah.
I think you made people very, very nervous.
I think that I don't
think you ever had an enemy who was trying to get rid of you, and I can't say that about myself.
Right.
But I think you made people very nervous. It was just a complete culture clash of who you were and what that place was.
Yeah, I feel like I was doing a tightrope thing.